Previously on Dragon Ball Z.
So for the entirety of Project 24's development, we live streaming and creating monthly blog posts regularly, where I'll go in depth on what it takes to bring this game to life.
One eternity later.
This guy thought he could work a day job, build a game all by himself, and make content. Oh, you sweet fool. You sweet, sweet fool. So what's up? It's your boy, Simon. You wanna know what the project is? You wanna know what I've been up to?
Oh, you wanna see something cool? No? Well, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Sorry about that. Where was I? Yes. So, what you actually just saw was simply a game client linked to a game server, and then actually transitioned to a different level via the server. And I know that doesn't sound like it's super complicated and should be cause for celebration, but what if I told you that's all I've been working on for the past year? And hold up, I wasn't done. What if I told you I threw out pretty much all of my work almost from the past year before even getting to that point? Huh? Okay, now with all the funny business out of the way, let's actually talk about what led to that decision. So, let's start with a quick recap. So one of the goals with Project 24 is it's Gears meets Wordle. So it's this concept of having a horde-based arena shooter with some boomer shooter nostalgia. But one of the key things and key inspirations that I'm taking from Wordle is the ability to quickly share scores. Actually, this is one of the reasons that led to such big rise in popularity. Pulled directly from the Wikipedia article, the game gained a large popularity in December 2021 when Wordle added the ability for players to copy their data results as emoji squares, which was shared on Twitter. And if we pull over the Wikipedia article, here's an example of what that actually looked like. So, this led me to ask, what could I actually do to mimic that ability to share a score from a run very quickly? So this led me to open graph images. And for the uninitiated, open graph images are those rich text previews that you get in Discord or Messenger or those various tools that support rich messaging. It usually comes with an image preview, a description, and a title. As my time as a web developer, I found to really enjoy Vercel and some of their technologies like Next.js. And they actually created a package to allow you to generate open graph images on the fly. So just jumping into this example real quick, I can change this text. And like that is actually updating in real time as an SVG. So I actually went and created the ability to do this in the API. So if we increase this text size real quick, you can see that this is actually calling a GET request to a web app and passing through the score ID for this score. It also says if there's already a short link, just return it. And this is in the older Nest.js version of the API that I built initially. Now, the problem that I found with this is Nest.js is a code-first API tool, meaning you actually have to generate the schema via code first. And while this is great because it gives you fine-grained control, things of that nature, it's not the fastest way to do it. So after a while, I came across a tool called GraphBase. Now GraphBase was a database first, so it would infer your GraphQL types via the database. So it would connect there first, get your data source, and then you could create extensions. So I had some custom extensions that I used to get nearby scores, to pull mods and user data into the score, and also pull the gameplay mods and leaderboard GraphQL request. And this was great. This worked really well for a while. The unfortunate reality was that GraphBase ended up sunsetting their standalone graph service. So, and this actually happened almost a month after I got that into the game, which wasn't great, but it is what it is when you're, paying for a service. Now, luckily, they did end up offering a self-hosted version for a while, so that allowed me to self-host the GraphQL schema that was generated by the database, and it did let me initially finish the work that I had started with creating the Open Graph image generation. So here's an example of what it looks like. So I'm pulling the user's name, the rank for the score, and just creating some basic text. This is all placeholder for right now. Obviously it's not in depth. Here's a closer up version of what it looks like. So I'm actually pulling the mod information, including the mod's name, the mod image, and the points and the date. So this was really cool. It was really fun, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Now, at this point, I had Open Graph image generation. I had selected a hosting service for the game servers. This is a server authoritative game. It's not necessarily a multiplayer game, but the reason why I'm using dedicated servers is to allow me to have control over how the user can talk to the backend and the leaderboard system. And also it allows me to kind of shore up the competitive nature of the game by having things like enemies and damage and health be server-side authoritative. There's an in-depth blog post on kind of why I decided to move from a client-side authoritative game to a server-side, and you can check that out at the Agencies Forum blog. I had an API, I had server hosting, I had user login authentication, but I still felt like the backend API stuff was really just holding me back from getting gray blocks moving around, which was my honest to God real goal last year. And going into 2025, I just didn't feel like spending more time on actually building a backend. So that got me thinking, there's got to be something out there. So with the fact that I spent the time building an API, that means I knew what I needed and I knew what I needed to look for. So when I first started looking for something off the shelf, there were a few key things that I started with. Indie friendly. I wanted to have a product that had a nice free or hobby plan that also could be grown into, meaning if the game did take off, I wouldn't have to scramble to jump through hoops to get more bandwidth or more stuff allocated. I'm a big believer in open source. I believe you can actually have a better product that way by getting it in the hands of developers. Obviously, I knew I needed leaderboards. That's like a key aspect of my game. And I needed their data model for, I guess, storage of information to be flexible. Meaning I needed to be able to change information on the fly and actually be able to update information as needed, whether that's user data, metadata, or whatever. And lastly, it needed to support Epic Online Services login, because that's the primary way I'm having my users log in to support cross-platform logins. So with this in mind, I started my search. So I started digging around, looking over forums, looking through various developer discords, and lo and behold, I came across probably the best option possible, which was Loot Locker. So Loot Locker is a game publishing platform. It's a literal backend that you can use for your games. It supports everything from in-app purchasing to cloud management, all kinds of game systems. So let me just take you through some of the highlights. So it's actually being used by real developers, real indie teams, even large games. It even supports various platforms like Xbox and PlayStation. And their pricing model, I think, is relatively great. It starts at free, which again was one of my goals. And you can grow all the way up to an enterprise level support. They have all kinds of SDKs for Unity, Unreal, and you can even use the REST API, which is actually what I'm using. supports game configs and all kinds of different stuff. So this ended up being a great choice. And I think one of the keys that helped me identify this as a great choice was the fact that I built it first. So that's kind of my first point to make, is the reason why I don't think spending a year on this is a waste is because it helped me quickly identify what I needed from a third-party service. Now, of course, the con is now I'm dependent upon an external service, but there are ways to mitigate the risks there and also inform the players quickly if, say, Loot Locker does have an issue. So that's why I decided to throw away 90% of my work from 2024 is that I made the decision to pivot and pivot quickly. And the great news is I was able to integrate Loot Locker and replace the API calls that I'd already had in my game in less than a couple weeks. I have everything validated. I even was able to connect it directly to Epic Online Services as a user authentication path. But Loot Locker does support things like white label login or logging in through like Apple Sign-In ID or Google Auth or various other platforms, including. So see, you had nothing to worry about. Had you worried for a second there, didn't I? So now with the ability to connect to a server and actually change maps and log in and talk to a backend, you might be asking, well, what's next? You don't even have things running around yet. And you'd be right, okay? And I don't appreciate that tone.
Come on, man.
I really want to get great blocks moving around, but the overall goal for 2025 is to be ready for Oak City Indie. Oak City Indie is an indie game festival put on by Triangle Interactive Arts. Some great friends of mine who I've met over the last couple of years, and they do a great job, and it's a great event, and I really want to have a build ready for that event so I can hopefully be accepted into the festival. And the goal with that build is it should be a vertical slice, or another way to say it, to be fully representative of what the actual gameplay would feel like and play like for Project 24's full release. Another reason to get this build done is it'll allow me to apply for grants and funding at the end of the year, because I'll have something playable for people to put their hands on. So that's what's next. So I didn't want to leave you today without making a couple of exciting announcements. So one, we've launched our IndieDB page for Agents of Swarm and Project 24. IndieDB is a site where independent developers can come, share what they're up to, share what they're working on, and build community around their games as they're being made and created. Secondly, we've launched our Discord community. So when I set out and started Agents of Swarm, I was very clear that I wanted to create a community where creatives can come, share what they're up to, ask questions, get feedback, and really grow and feel challenged and also held to account, held to say like, hey, you said you wanted to do this, so where are you at? We're cheering you on. And this is the first step of that. So it's not necessarily a place to come and talk about the latest games or the latest developer drama. It's really about, here's where I'm at, here's where I need help, what do you think of this? Here's some work in progress. I made this really cool milestone. And that's the kind of place that this Discord is. I want to be clear though, that this is your Discord. It's not just mine. If you want to create new topics, new channels, have events, please, at me and the Discord, and let's talk about it. This is a collaborative community, and that's really what I want to build with this Discord. So you can find that link below. Feel free to join it. Feel free to share the link with your friends and other developers and creators. But that's all we've got for this time. So as always, stop dreaming, start creating. I'll see you guys around.